I grew up 100 yards from the sheriff's department. The fire department was right across the street from that, so always wanted to be a police officer. And went to school, graduated from ETSU with a criminal justice degree, commissioned in U.S. Army, military police. So that was my career path.
Okay, so you joined the military, and then when you got out of the military, what made you get out? I mean, did you just 4 years, 8 years? How long did you serve?
I was in reserve.
Okay.
At that time, it was kind of like now. They had a big drawdown down, and I was already in a reserve unit. So if you were already in a reserve unit, your chances of going active duty were nil, just about.
Okay, so you graduated from, I guess, Irwin High School,
Unicoi County,
Unicoi County. What year did you graduate?
1980. I actually graduated in '79, but I was a class of '80.
Then you joined the Army,
I went to ETSU, Army ROTC.
and so you started there in 1980.
I actually started the fall of '79.
Okay, so ETSU and then ROTC.
Yeah.
So then you graduated in what year?
From ETSU,
Mhm.
'84.
84. And then you went in the Army Reserves, or did you go into the?
No, I was in the early commissioning program, which if you did all the credits for the classes and all from the Army commissioning, you could do it early, as long as you were like in a reserve unit or whatever. So I actually got commissioned in '82.
Okay.
Was in reserve for 13 years.
Okay, so from 1982 until
95,
95, what was your rank in the Army?
captain.
Captain. And what did you do in the Army? What did you do? What was the?
I was basically a basic training company commander. It's where I finished at, but started as a training officer and a company executive officer and a company commander.
Okay, so at what point in that time did you join? Were you hired straight in from the fire department, or how did you get to where you are now with the Johnson City Fire Department?
Well, I hired in with the Johnson City Police Department day after Christmas of '84. Did my field experience with them my last semester in school.
Okay.
So that was, I guess, until May of '84.
Okay.
Got hired, went to the police academy in '85, and stayed with the police department until 1990.
So what made you join? What made you want to be in the fire department over the police department?
Well, I tell people I went to where people wave to you with all their fingers, but you know, when I got on at the police department and I liked what we were doing, I mean, I knew we had to be a PSO. And I started learning, you know, the fire side of it, and it came to the point we could transfer over, and I thought, why do two dangerous jobs when you really can't keep up with both skill sets? So after the John Sevier fire, I thought, I'm going to go to the fire department, and opening came up, so I got hired in, you know, direct transfer over. First crew I served with was Bosco, Donnie, Boughton, and I was trying to think, I guess Nelson was there, Donnie Nelson too.
Do you remember anything about your early years at Station 3, as far as anything that stands out, anything that stands out to you about your time at Station 3?
Well, you didn't really stay there that long before they moved you somewhere else, but I guess the first thing I remember that was kind of odd is making you drive the tanker. I mean, right out the door. You know, I hadn't been here long, a couple months, and they're, you know, stick you on the tanker. So that was a little bit different, but it was just a completely different mindset from the police department. Police department, you know, you see your zone partners on calls, and you see everybody in roll call, and that's pretty much it. You make your own decisions on the fly right off the bat, and I guess I felt like a fish out of water coming down here in a way, because it's basically they wanted you to kind of wait to be told what to do, and the team concept thing, you didn't make your own decisions, which I understand that, you know, but it took about a year, I guess, before I kind of got comfortable.
Okay. So I guess in comparing those two with the police and the fire, we'll roll back there. One thing is the stressors that you have experienced as a policeman, how does it compare with what the stressors that a firefighter might face? Can you put that in them?
Yeah, honestly, I guess the work schedule was one thing. When I first came, we worked 10 straight days on day shift, off 2, 10 4 to 12s, and off 4, and then 10 midnights and off 4. So you really, your body didn't know if you was going or coming, you know. And to be honest, most of the stressor was from administrative side, to be honest. I'm sure you got some calls that stressed you out a little bit, but I don't know. I think coming to the fire side, more the team concept. At that point in time, we only ran maybe 3,000 calls a year, so we weren't doing medical. So chances of getting to sleep were fairly good, you know. So you felt better coming in now.
When did you get promoted to driver, or what was your promotional?
I took the first test in '93, number 1 on the list, and they promoted something like 8 people at that point at different times. It wasn't 8 at one time.
Okay.
Off the list, but I was told I was passed over because I had been a PSO, and they didn't think I could fit in right there. So took the test again in '95, made number 1 on the test, and I got promoted. The first day I got promoted, I stand at the bay door wondering why did I do this? You know, because each shift is different. Each shift has their own personality. No matter how hard you try to make them the same, you're not going to.
Okay.
So it was again that anytime you get moved or promoted, it's that first little bit of thinking, should I have done this? You know,
Right.
until you get comfortable with everybody and what's going on.
When did you test for lieutenant? When did you get promoted?
I think it was in '04.
04?
Yeah.
Okay. Tested for 04, and then you would have been promoted to lieutenant?
Yes.
And what shift were you on there then?
I went back to A shift.
A shift, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I had we went out on the interstate on a 1046, wrecked injuries, and it started to get a little bit misty and cold. It was cold, and it started to snow. By the time we were finished with the wreck, we couldn't move hardly. There was too much ice. So we just had the brand new engine 5, the Sutphen, and we got out on the interstate, like I said, and the farthest we could make it was gray. We went to Dairy Queen and sat in the parking lot, and we couldn't move. All access was blocked. You know, volunteers were going different places by us, but we couldn't move. So it was a weird night. It probably took us 3 or 4 hours before they got the salt trucks out and where we could get back to station.
Okay. So how long were you at, you were from 2004, you were lieutenant at Station 5. Then after that, when did you take the next test, or when did you get promoted after that?
I think it was 2012.
So it would have been assistant chief or district chief?
Well, it's called district chief now, but it was a captain then. We were
Okay.
shift commander over all 9 stations.
And that would have been on
B shift.
B shift.
Yeah.
So 2012, you were promoted to captain on B shift. So which station were you? You're actually at Station 3, I guess. So, okay. And who were you with mainly at Station 3 during that time?
Well, at Station 3 at that time they had the MP-29, so
Okay.
there was a bunch of people there.
Okay.
And you know, that was the thing I take from those years too is all the characters they had on B shift is like, oh, I don't want to go to B shift, you know. But that was probably the best thing ever, because when the MP guys were there, if you went upstairs and called them in the radio room, they were all in the computer room, radio room. You know, if one of them was eating, they were all eating. They were a big brotherhood at that station. And that made it so much easier to, you know, feel like you're really a part of something. You know, I got promoted again, but before that I ended up being out of work for about a year and a half. Actually, from the time I left shift to the time I got back on shift was 1 year, 8 months, and 22 days with colon cancer. Prior to that, though, I would say, you know, a lot of guys were skeptical about the physicals that they had to go through and do, but that's what saved my life. I had no symptoms that I knew of. When we went for my yearly physical, my red blood cells had dropped in half from the year before, so that caused great concern, almost to the point that I needed transfusion. I mean, I had noticed coming out of Station 5 when you're running up and down the towers with your air pack on, I wasn't having any problem. Then later on, when you go to Station 3 with no gear on, just being the captain going up and down the steps all day, you think, I know I can't be this out of shape. So it just got to the point where I was anemic, and one of the signs and symptoms of being anemic is craving ice. Well, as a shift commander, I went from station to station, all 9 stations, talking all day long, and I'd sit there, because you can't drink a Dr. Enough or anything like that at every station you go to, so I'd carry me a cup of ice. And then it got to the point, even on days off, I'd run down, give me a big old cup of just ice to chew on, you know. That didn't enter my mind until I was told that that is a symptom of anemia. So, but anyway, actually the physical saved my life twice. First time was probably 99 when my thyroid started acting up, and you know, it wouldn't have found that unless we'd had the blood test. So getting back to the cancer, I went on FMLA. I had a tumor on the right side. JD Hill the year before at Station 5 had a tumor on the left side, and so we kind of went through that struggle a little bit. You know, he was kind of ending his when mine was starting, so there was a little support network there. But you go in, they traced it down through a colonoscopy and found the tumor. They wanted to do surgery that day, but my surgeon wasn't available, so we put it off for about a month. I had cancer in one lymph node, which was enough for make them start to doing the chemo, which I'm glad. That sounds kind of odd, but had it just been a stage 2, they wouldn't have done chemo. So I'm sure it would have shown up somewhere else later on. But yeah, there were setbacks. My cancer wasn't, I couldn't do the cancer treatments on schedule most of the time. You go in on a Monday and they'd test your blood first to see if everything was good. If it was out of whack, then you couldn't take it, because at that time, they mix the chemicals up for chemo after they make sure everything's good, because it's so expensive, they can't just waste it. At that time, which is what, 9 years ago, it cost $19,000 every 2 weeks for chemo. So I went through 12 treatments of chemo, which was just a little bit longer than it should have been, but we got through it. Didn't have to have radiation. Then came back, and I still couldn't work because I had a port, and they wouldn't let you work until the port was out, so you could wear your SCBA. Ended up with an incisional hernia from the surgery, so I had to go for another surgery for that. Came back and then had to go through the work steps, and basically they put me through rehab first to build me up to do that. So that's why it took so long to get back. I think the takeaway is from years later. You know, there was no instant command system down there. It was free for all, people right around. And I'll have to say probably the best organized was EMS at that time, because they had ambulances from all over and they staged them back then and had that.
Yeah, I thought I was something when I got a BlackBerry, and little did I know it'd been out of date 10 years prior. It was a hand-me-down.
Yeah.